The year is 2009 and you are in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. Bitches twisting their neck, doing a 180, everyone's screaming, people are biting other people. It's ridiculous. But your name's Hideo Suzuki and you've been waiting for this moment your whole life. A shotgun and a can-do attitude is all you need because you're great, you're awesome, you are a hero. You, how do I put this?
You're also schizophrenic.
I think there's a lot that separates I Am a Hero from your typical reading experiences because I don't think I've ever read a manga that's constantly made me question myself. One panel will show you a bite mark or a giant butterfly only for it to all be made up. Yes, it's obvious that this story takes place in a zombie apocalypse, but
does it really?
Hideo Suzuki is a 35-year-old shut-in who spent his whole life pursuing his dreams of becoming a great manga artist, someone who struggles to balance his normal life with the hallucinations around him, granny dolls coming out of the bed sheets, or levitating heads knocking on your front door. These are things that, while terrifying, yes, are obviously not real to us. But for Hideo, this is something that's been haunting him for most of his life. Even in this unusual life, he's got everything you'd need: aspirations, degenerate buddies, and even a romantic relationship. In retrospect, there's nothing wrong with what he does as long as he enjoys it. But it's nothing special. It's not someone who you'd put on the spotlight or someone who you'd envision becoming a main character. But you see, that's the thing. As you're reading this, there's that constant thought of skepticism in the back of my head that's like,
wait, does he actually have a girlfriend? Are any of his buddies even real?
The extent of Hideo's imagination can make things feel frighteningly real. Full-on conversations with others in the same room as him when the reality is that they never happened. This haunts Hideo more than anything, the fact that he can't trust his own senses. This fear is why he's the last one to believe that he's really in the midst of what might be the end of the world. This ends up becoming one of the most ridiculous mangas I think I've ever read. This is I Am a Hero. At first, it was nothing more than just a fad. Stories would come up on the Japanese news channels about some crackhead biting an old lady on the bus. If anything, that's just a Tuesday in Florida. But one story became multiple. Various cities across Japan started posting articles with similar headlines, and multiple stories led to it coming up in everyday conversations.
Hey, did you hear about that guy on the news? I heard he's from Florida or something.
Conversations led to panic and outrage. This is starting to become something serious. People are being told to stay home and evacuate populated areas. Family members and celebrities go missing or are found dead. It's starting to look bad. Really bad. And the only one who's unaware of all this is Hideo himself. To him, there's no way any of this can be real. Some lady getting run over by a car and walking it off. Must be another hallucination or something. The UPS driver trying to eat me alive? I'm definitely just imagining things. And the final straw was when it got to the only person he cares about. After a long day of work, Hideo calls his girlfriend to apologize. The night before, they got into a really bad argument, but something felt off this time. Calls were going straight to voicemail and nothing was going through.
What's going on? She always answers her phone.
He goes around to ask her friends and no one seems to have seen her all day. The last thing he could do was head on over to her apartment to at least see if everything's okay, only for him to open the door and
Jesus Christ!
Little did Hideo know that this was going to change everything. What used to be his girlfriend is no longer with us. Sorta. That was the last glimpse he was ever going to get from a normal life because we're left with over 200 chapters of nothing but pain and suffering and baby zombies. When it comes to writing a story that's supposed to evoke fear, if you don't really think about it for too long, it probably doesn't end up doing much, kind of like thalassophobia or liminal spaces. Yeah, I've gone swimming before, it's no biggie, but then you spend some time to really think about what's in the ocean. Creatures that you're constantly unaware of that could eat you alive if they wanted to. Oh, what's this subreddit? It's called Liminal Spaces? Huh, that's interesting. It's just rooms that are like weird. Except I've seen these rooms before. Why do I remember these? Why does does it feel like I'm looking at vague memories of things that have never existed before? I think I had that same realization when I took a second to imagine someone trying to survive a zombie apocalypse with schizophrenia. Half the things you see aren't real, and the other half is trying to kill you. I mean, at least there's proof that these things are real, right?
Everyone else is freaking out about it, so at least I'm not the only one.
Everyone's starting to lose their mind. For Hideo, this moment of realization came when he witnessed his own boss kill the assistant for no apparent reason, only to be followed up by his coworker then bashing his head in with a baseball bat, only to be followed up by that same guy getting decapitated by a What is going on, man? There's like 3 layers of confusion and panic, and it's all being told through the most unreliable point of view I've ever read in my life. One man with one shotgun. Why does he have a shotgun? Because why not? To a fellow American, you're probably like, hell fucking yeah, brother, so what? But this takes place in Japan, my friend. These things aren't something you can just pick up at your local Bass Pro Shop. For someone to get their hands on something like this means you've got yourself some S-tier loot. And this one thing changes everything for Hideo. Going from an awkward, cringy, neat,
Probably plays Genshin.
to the person with the best odds of making it out alive.
But best odds don't really mean good odds.
One zombie became 7 zombies, which attracted a whole horde of these things. With just one person, it's easy to feel frightened or overwhelmed, and after several days of torture and suffering and baby zombies, a glimpse of hope has finally come. But what I wasn't expecting was for that bit of hope to come from
A zombie of all things.
This is Hirami, a young schoolgirl who, in the midst of all this, found herself as the last survivor of the outbreak at her nearby school. The only detail that's not mentioned is that she also might be infected, but this one was completely different from the rest. It's safe to say that by now, 80% of Japan has turned either green or cannibalistic, but that didn't seem to be the case for Hirami. While infected, she seems to somehow maintain the brain and consciousness of a human, but still develop the unique abilities of a zombie, including the likes of having super strength or being able to communicate with others that have already been infected. And so now we're left with this dude and a schoolgirl. One of them has done nothing but confuse us as a reader.
And the other is a superhuman schoolgirl.
What lies in the rest of this story is nothing but
Wait a second.
a schoolgirl who's half human and half monster, meaning that she might be the cure to solve all of this, meaning she's a sidekick to our main protagonist who's trying to save the human race from an evil species. Are you trying to tell me Nezuko was based on this manga? What lies in the rest of this story is a long journey of how these two are going to be the ones to save the world, and the fate of the entire planet lies on the slight chance that what happened to Hirami might be a clue as to how all of this started, a fate that could potentially result in finding a cure to save everyone. To me, everything sounded really nice on paper, but I had no clue whether or not to believe what I was actually looking at. I know I keep mentioning this, but I couldn't help myself from getting so obsessed with making theories on these goddamn hallucinations, and so I started doing a bit of my own research and annotating, jotting down every moment where I noticed a mild inconsistency in different panels that were being shown. For example, that fucking airplane scene. I'm completely convinced that the only way for this to work was if this entire character was made up. Now, hear me out. The dude that gets decapitated is one of Hideo's coworkers named Mitani. If you put these two characters side by side, they look awfully similar.
Matani is a pervy sexist degenerate who's shown spending most of his time either belittling Hideo or stalking his female coworkers.
But I came up with a theory that this is simply just a projection of Hideo that highlights some of his worst traits into one person. I believe that this is another version of himself that he absolutely despises, making that airplane moment become the turning point where he lets go of that side of himself. And in my stupid little imaginary brain, I started to become convinced this was dabbled all over the manga, leading to me questioning the existence of his girlfriend, his friends, or Hirami, Oda, Araki. But there was one idea that I wouldn't dare to ever mention, and that was the theory that all of the zombies were hallucinations. There's 2 reasons why ideas like this piss me off. Number 1, Hideo didn't have psychic abilities that made the entire population of Japan witness the same imaginations as him. The second reason is because that's basically the same thing as saying a coma theory. A coma theory is literally the most waste of space idea you could ever add to a story. Like, I specifically remember back in 2016, there was an absurd trend of videos on YouTube that would come up with these reasons as to why a certain show is actually just someone in a coma. Whoa, Ash Ketchum hits his head on episode 3 and then starts imagining these colored edibles and calls them Pokemon. Eren Yeager in episode... actually dies and everything afterwards is just a dream. Shut up! This stuff is so annoying to hear because it's like, yeah, no shit. You could pretty much say any piece of media is made up. It's fiction. You're basically saying that something that's made up is made up. Fucking congratulations, man. So I decided to stay away from coming up with anything else. It was getting to the point where I was taking things to an extent where it wasn't really going to serve a purpose. I realized it was taking away from the other intriguing aspects of I Am a Hero. This manga comments on the extent of insanity that people will go through in dire times. When you become the last surviving 10% of a nation's population, there's not really much you can work with here. Cities that are filled with things that have super strength and are capable of jumping 20 feet in the air, it's nothing but terrifying and hopeless. Half of the remaining survivors were shut-ins who never went outside, and the other half are criminals and murderous psychos who were longing for an opportunity like this. People became lost, longing for the slightest bit of faith and hope that eventually things will turn out right.
But in reality, nobody was coming to save them.
Military and police forces were found completely annihilated, while smaller opposing groups became the new form of authority. Cult leaders started to rise and take advantage of the situation. One following became multiple, and the majority of survivors had begun to admire a mysterious figure, an unknown person under the alias of Kurusu, claiming to be the one who knows how this all started, leaving behind many unanswered questions as to the origins of the infected and how someone like Hiromi came to be. There's a plethora of mysteries that are left to be uncovered. 1. How did this happen? 2. Are these things supposed to be zombies or super aliens? 3. Why the fuck does this guy keep singing something called the pussy song? Scratch that. 3. Is there a cure? 4. How are we supposed to make it out alive? And last, what would we even do after all of this is done? When it comes to making videos like these, I tend to have a really hard time contemplating if I should recommend this manga or just cover it entirely. I'm never really sure of myself to either spoil a story in its entirety or just leave enough for you to want to go check it out. And after doing a bit of thinking, the solution that I finally came up with was that I think I'm just gonna leave it here.
Hey guys, I was totally joking about ending the video right there. You can pretty much tell how much is left in this video, so I thought that was pretty obvious. I just wanted to let you guys know that I've taken so long at editing this video that I ended up finishing Jump King. I literally finished Jump King. Yeah, anyways, here's a montage of the rest of the manga.
Okay, where do I start? So, Hideo and Hiromi come across a group of survivors that are stationed at an outlet mall. This means that they found a place with a shit ton of resources and a place they could potentially settle in. The vibe was off, but everything seemed to be great so far. What could possibly go wrong? Well, that's a great question. What could go wrong is that these people turn out to basically be a cult. The leader has no interest in anything other than taking that shotgun. The only sane person at this outlet mall is named Oda, and she decides that the three of them should get the fuck out of there. One person gets infected and things start going south really quickly. One zombie was an Olympic athlete, so this happens. This guy sets himself on fire. This guy rips They decide to go to Tokyo, but Tokyo ends up being even worse. Turns out there's multiple cults out there that are even worse than the people at this mall. These are also cults that have their own superhuman zombies like Hiromi. One of them turns out to be Kurusu, and the other one is a dude in a diaper and a bow tie with 2 shovels. At this point, I'm starting to get really confused and don't really understand how or why Patrick Star was involved. Hideo-sama managed to not only be the only person with a shotgun in all of Japan, he now has a rifle. Then you find out this is happening all across the world in countries like Italy, France, and the US. Then it gets even worse because the zombies turn out to actually be an alien species. This alien species is combining into one giant being and nobody seems to understand why. This mortifyingly big creature is now migrating across Japan and murdering everything in its sight. This metamorphosis of 1,000 zombies continues to grow bigger and 1 billion times scarier, and I'm struggling to keep up with the plot because for whatever reason this woman just pissed her pants and now I did too. This metamorphosis of 1,000 zombies continues to grow bigger and 1 billion times scarier. Ammo is starting to run low. Hallucinations are coming back. This thing won't stop growing. Kurusu starts telepathically speaking to Hiromi about she's the chosen one, and at this point I'm completely lost and I thought this was about to do with schizophrenia.
I haven't even started studying for my math quiz!
I'm livid and freaking out. I don't understand why these guys are in diapers. This was not the plan. Hiromi's the chosen one? What the fuck is going on? Can this guy stop singing the pussy song?
Who the f came up with the design for this character?
Reading this manga feels like I'm inside someone's train of thought after dropping acid. 20 different ideas and directions these things could be taken, and Kengo Hanazawa was like,
Yeah, fuck it, let's do all of them.
at first, that's gonna sound like a bad thing, but I was honestly a fan of it the whole way through. The reason why I wanted to make this video in the first place was because of its absurdity. I mean, just looking back at some of my favorite mangas, you can very easily tell that I have a kink for this stuff. You feel like you have the slightest bit of a clue as to what's going on, and then this dude shows up. It was a combination of that and the appreciation I had with Kengo's art style. Not often do you find a story with an endless amount of love and passion that gets put into its panels. It's incredibly difficult to tell a compelling story on a deadline. It's even more difficult to do that on top of showing that story through ridiculously detailed pieces of art. There's just some authors out there that will go above and beyond what anybody ever thought to be possible. The closest comparison I can make is that it feels like the first time I got exposed to reading Berserk or Ayasumi Pun Pun. These are two stories that will make you feel like you're listening to a narrative through literal paintings, each and every single panel telling a story in a way that makes things feel tangible. Moments where I literally feel like I'm looking at black and white photos of something that was taken in real life. In many interviews, Kengo Hanazawa has stated that he doesn't want his stories to feel like they couldn't be in the real world. He tries to not stray away from reality or something that doesn't feel real. This dude managed to draw one of the most ridiculously detailed manga panels that I've seen in my life, and this keeps up for exactly 264 chapters. You want to talk about somebody who's on their Sigma male grind set? This dude, without a hiatus or any breaks, drew the entire goddamn story. Kengo Hanazawa is a living, walking machine. In interviews, he's even admitted that if he ever ended up getting a girlfriend while he was in school, he would have never become a mangaka.
Just look at these panels. Why is this guy in his underwear?
264 chapters later, and I feel empty. I have so many thoughts and feelings about the ending that I'm not going to spoil. I've never in my life put so much time and effort into a piece of media that made me want to say 1,000 different things. Theories and annotating all of the possibilities of what I was told versus what actually happened. Going out of my way to learn more about Kengo Hanazawa and his desire for striving to create his panels perfectly. And it shows. It turns out that the ending had to be rushed due to some health problems that the author was facing during its last chapters. This story felt flawed and incomplete, but in a way that really spoke to me. This was something that tried a bunch of different things and said, fuck it. Nothing was being held back, and it made the experience of reading I Am a Hero something that could never be compared to anything else. I have spent so much time thinking about the hallucinations and the context of everything that I had finally realized that none of it even mattered. Kengo Hanazawa wanted to create a story that revolved around someone who would never be put in the spotlight. It's about Hideo becoming the hero he's always wanted to be. It's about you striving to become the best version of yourself regardless of the circumstance. Leading back to the significant moment in the second chapter in which Hideo mentions wanting to create a story that would be remembered for 100 years. And I like to think that was a message that Kengo wanted to lay over to himself as an author. So thank you for making I Am a Hero. To me, this is something that I'll never forget. I don't think this will be a manga for everyone. Matter of fact, I doubt this would even be interesting to 10% of anyone who watches this, but to that small number of people that have either already read it or are thinking about it or have some kind of interest in the zombie genre, I promise you, you'll love it. Thanks.
Stuck in this TV and I have no way of getting out. Anyways, thanks to anyone that stuck around till the end. I don't know why you would do that to yourself, but it's very much appreciated. I spent beyond too much time making this one. Every time I'm starting one of these, I end up overdoing it and then over-editing it, and then it ends up taking way too long. But this one didn't really turn out the way that I wanted it to. I think I just ended up getting a bit lost in the sauce. I was rewriting over and over and over and over again, and then re-recording like 80 times, and then I had a bunch of audio problems. But I'm glad that it's done, and you know, just because the way it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, it's totally fine. We'll just have to make the next one even better. Anyway, subscribe if you enjoyed even watching a millisecond of this, or don't! Like the video, share anything else you'd like me to read or make a video of, or don't! Check out I Am a Hero.